The main issue is everybody. It takes two people to have sex.
It doesn't take two people to... Well, technically
it does.
but it doesn't take the consent of two people. It doesn't take the consent of two people to...
Usually it takes some level of consent from the woman to get a... Yes.
Hello again.
Hi, what's up? Are you less mad today, or are you at the same level of madness?
I wasn't mad. Dude, I was, how can I put it without getting in trouble? I was medicated. I was pretty chill. I was very chill. Almost too chill.
Wow, that's you too chill.
Yeah,
I'm scared to see you off medication, so. Well, what's up? What do you want to, or what would you like us to have a conversation about?
I don't know. People came in and said you wanted to talk to me again. I honestly was just going over your video on our debate and just giving my thoughts, just responding. That's all. I don't know what you want to talk about. What would you like to talk about, Destiny?
Oh, well, my chat told me that you wanted me to call you.
No, my chat told me that you wanted to speak again, but I had to call you. And I said, no, I'm willing to, but I don't desire it, because there's a difference between willingness and desire, as I mentioned yesterday. I know that you don't understand the difference, but there is a difference between willingness and desire.
Okay. Well, is there anything that came up in the video that you wish you would have said?
There's something I wish I'd known, actually, because I've always known that learning martial arts is good for confidence, so that women feel more able to speak up and defend themselves. But did you see the study that I linked on Twitter?
Yeah, I saw you going over on stream. The one that says that if women provide some sort of any kind of confrontation, it decreases the likelihood of a rape.
That's one of them. There's also the other one. There's also the other one that also shows that a 30-day course, a 30-hour course in self-defense reduces the success rate of rapes by 80%.
Yeah, that it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. I don't know if
you were saying we should train all women to be Sarah Connor. Weren't you saying that martial arts was a ridiculous statement, and that saying that women should be trained is a ridiculous statement that wouldn't reduce rape at all? Wasn't that something you said? I remember you saying that in the debate.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I guess if I said that, then I would have been incorrect. But there are other performance advice that I would give.
No. You literally did a whole performative section where you made fun of me and called me stupid for saying the martial arts was good.
Well, you said a lot of things. Yeah, you said a lot of things that were stupid. But
did I? Would you like to share your opinion on what else?
Am I going to be able to finish a single sentence without you aggressively jumping down my throat, or did you just want to do this the whole time?
Go for it, dude. It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't like the advice of go take 2 weeks of martial arts, or a month or 2 months of martial arts instructions or whatever, because I feel like that's putting a pretty big load on most people, and they might not be as likely to follow through with that. There are other tips or tricks you can give people in order to avoid
one 2-hour session is enough. 1 2-hour session is enough to significantly reduce the success rate.
Oh, well, if 1 2-hour session is enough to significantly reduce the success rate, well, then that sounds really cool. It sounds like there's a lot of it sounds like if that's the case, then there sounds like there's a lot of really simple things that women could do to reduce the likelihood of them getting raped, which is cool. That's good.
Yeah, I used to teach women self-defense classes.
Did you say 30 hours or 2 hours? I thought you said 30 hours initially.
30 hours is the 80% reduction. 30 hours is viewed as the best. The study concluded 30 hours of training was the best amount of time for time invested to successor prevention ratio. So it's sort of the ideal amount of time to diminishing returns, obviously, on continued training. So the best ratio was at 30 hours. That's what they found was the best.
Okay.
I didn't know this. I honestly did not know this. When I was teaching women self-defense classes, I even used to tell them, look, honestly, this is about increasing your confidence and you knowing how to move out of a situation as opposed to being able to fight off an attacker. I was wrong too.
Well, hold on. Wait. You would have been correct in saying that, right? These self-defense things aren't letting a woman beat a guy. It's probably letting somebody put up enough of a resistance that the guy stops, right?
Yeah, it's about getting out of the situation. It's not about beating the guy up and knocking him unconscious.
It's not about winning a physical confrontation and getting out.
It's not about winning the fight.
Yeah, it's about being confident. So you were correct in your first statement that you would have said that this isn't going to teach you to win in a fight, right? Yeah, sure. That's very magnanimous.
That's very magnanimous.
Sure. If I'm telling somebody that if you give a verbal confrontation, you're likely to stop most things from happening, then if you can give a decent physical confrontation or at least have the confidence,
the verbal confrontation bit, I feel like I've been mischaracterized on this. I never said that giving a verbal stop doesn't at all reduce your chances of being raped. Of course it does, and the study says so. What I said was that a verbal confrontation, the study also found, was the only type of resistance that had a significant increased chance of violence afterwards, especially if it was viewed as ambiguous. Especially if it was ambiguous.
That's not true, right?
No, it would have a chance of stopping it, but it also has a chance of making it worse with ambiguous verbal statement.
ambiguous.
Have you read the study? Could you pull up the actual 77-page study as opposed to this? Because
I'm reading the exact same thing that you read. If you read a different part of the methodology or something, they went over the exact same thing.
I read the study before I linked it.
Oh, then go ahead and show me the link. Or actually, can you tell me then what were the prompts that were given by the women to be ambiguous in their?
Unfortunately, they don't have the exact language that the women used, because this is all about self-reporting, because it's got to be events.
So then it sounds like you telling me to pull up the same study isn't going to get us anywhere, right? We just have to kind of
I guess not. I guess that's a difference of opinion of what you would consider ambiguous or what they would consider ambiguous.
Well, do you think, sure, let's just think about it. If a woman said, hey, I don't want to do this, stop, is that ambiguous to you?
Well, here's the thing, right? When it says ambiguous in this study, it's talking about whether it's an aggressive response or not, is generally what they talk about in the study, is that it's whether it's an aggressive response. So the argument that you should reassert boundaries in that situation, which was what your initial tweet said, we can agree that you said that you should reassert the boundary. I disagree with that entirely. I think that if someone violates a boundary, you don't reassert it, you end the encounter, which you agreed with when I put you in the situation hypothetically.
Well, hold on. Reasserting a boundary can also mean ending an encounter.
No, reasserting the boundary would be... So the boundary is, if you want to fuck me, you wear a condom, right?
Yeah.
We agree that's the boundary that was set. If someone then goes, I'm going to take the condom off, stealthing, and you say, no, reasserting the boundary would then be saying, no, if you want to fuck me, you need to wear a condom. Like, this is...
Sure, that could literally be the reasserting the boundary. If you wanted to fuck me, you were a condom, but you didn't. So now, like, we're done. That's informing them of the violation of a boundary and ending the encounter. That is enforcing a boundary, which is a different thing from reasserting. I'm sorry, I know that it's nitpicky, right? But it's not nitpicky. No, hold on. First of all, I don't nitpick. That's not what I'm here for. Okay. Yeah. I don't care to waste my time nitpicking. Number one.
You didn't do that at all.
Sure. I don't. If you think I am, feel free to point out a time I am instead of just saying I am. But I'm not here to nitpick, right? What I'm saying is that if you verbally reinforce a boundary, that verbal reinforcement might lead to you ending the encounter. That's fine. Do you think that I would say that?
No. The answer is it should always end the encounter. You should never reinforce the boundary. It is bad advice to say that people should reinforce it.
Okay.
In the event of stealthing, it is bad advice. To quote you, you're helping rapists.
Oh my God.
What? It's bad advice.
That's up for the woman or the person in the sexual circumstance to figure out at the time.
So now the different situations need to be figured out at the time, but before. And
no. Hold on. Okay, you're trying really hard to win on a semantic point. Okay,
I'm not trying to win on a semantic point. Look,
okay, let me know when I can finish a full sentence. Okay,
because you're really eager to jump. Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so there is a bare minimum of reaction that I expect from a person who's going to engage in sexual circumstances. Once that bare minimum threshold has been met, then it's up to them to figure out, how do they want to proceed from that point. Just because I believe there's a bare minimum level of reaction expected doesn't mean that I don't think there's any nuance. So for instance, I might say that I think you should have to at least be able to see over the steering wheel to drive a car. And somebody's like, oh, really? You think that that's super important? And I'm like, yeah. And then let's say we get into a circumstance about how much should you have to drink or how tired should you be. And then I'm like, yeah, well, I don't think that you should drive while you're tired or whatever, something like that. And you're like, oh, well, hold on. Now you're giving me nuance about should you drive or should you not drive or whatever.
Sorry. I disagree with
this is what, yeah, sure.
I'm sorry to jump in. I know that you're getting annoyed, but I disagree with this.
Well, I get annoyed because you've cut me off every single time, but go ahead. Go do your straw man. Yeah.
No. What straw man?
The straw man you're saying is that I was saying that it was impossible to introduce nuance because there was a minimum threshold of behavior that I expected. That's a totally ridiculous statement.
The argument I was making was when I said that you going after this girl specifically on Twitter yesterday, when I said that it was bad that you did that and to make a judgment on her situation because you did not know the details of it, all right? And then you said, well, the line is, if anybody stealths you, regardless of who it is that stealths you, right? You should be able to speak up. And if you can't have casual sex. And my argument was, well, that situation is highly nuanced. You don't know how he stealthed her. You don't know what was going on at the time. You don't know what he was saying or doing. We don't know anything about the situation.
There is an obvious qualification there. If a guy stealths you and he pulls out a knife and he says, I'm going to have sex with you without a condom or else I'm going to cut your throat. Obviously,
well, that's not stealthing.
Well, I mean, it kind of is, right?
Well,
Or like, there's a case.
stealthing implies stealth. I mean, saying,
Well,
hey,
sure,
I'm
but
gonna
I'm
take the condom
saying, well,
off.
hold on, but I'm saying if you want to say there's different circumstances of conversation, but like as a general rule of thumb, you should be able to speak up when somebody's doing it to you. That's something I would stand by. There might be some hyper
as a general-
contextualized, hyper unique like thing where, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree as a general rule of thumb, it would be great
what do we
if
disagree
everybody
about?
could speak up. No, what we
No,
disagree about...
not it would be great. That should be an expectation.
Okay, if it's an expectation, then I have an issue with the way that you shared said expectation online.
Sure, and you know what?
That you
That's
worded
totally
it poorly.
fair. That's totally
I think you
fair.
worded it poorly.
If you
did
think that
not make the point that you are now
Sure,
saying you were trying to make, right?
No,
I think that
no,
you
I absolutely
came
was.
across...
We can go back through any tweet and I'll say it's the same point. Now, if you want to say like you were really mean or you were a jerk with the way that you said it, yeah, sure, I'm an asshole.
No,
I agree
I
with that.
think that the way you said it was attacking a victim. I don't think it was helpful. Sure, I don't think your
there are
argument
times
now
where, okay,
that you were trying
whether
to give
it's
helpful advice.
because I'm being
is
too
not
mean
that
or
your
whatever.
argument?
I'm not
helpful advice.
I'm not trying to give helpful advice to her. I don't care about that person.
Yeah,
my goal is not to
dude, when someone else read a tweet where she said that when she was raped and she told them to stop, they raped her harder, and you belly laughed, pretty obvious you don't care about that person.
Yeah, I super don't care about that person. That post is ridiculous because the implication is that no matter what you say or do, it's always just going to get worse. Which, by the own studies you've linked now, you've seen is not true. Which is good.
No, I never agreed with her point. Right? I think that her point was incorrect. That it's always going to get worse if you say something. I never agreed with that. What I said is what you said in response was not a correction of that misunderstanding. It was not helpful in any way. It wasn't progressing the conversation, which is how you're trying to frame it now, of you're a champion for women and you're trying to help women in these kinds of situations, that I'm teaching people to rape, or that I'm being a rape apologist by saying like sometimes women will feel unable or unsafe in speaking up, and that is a very nuanced situation that has to be analyzed. If you're retroactively analyzing it in a past behavior, you have to examine the nuance of that situation, which you didn't know. You weren't doing a helpful uplifting of women or preventing future rapes thing. You were doing dogging on a sexual assault victim. That's what you were doing. You were ragging on a sexual assault victim. I don't know whether it's to be edgy or because you like internet drama. I mean, you clearly like internet drama, but like, there's no reason to rag on a sexual assault victim over their sexual assault, whether or not you think they behaved correctly.
Sorry. Hello?
Hello?
Oh, hi.
Oh, you missed that?
Just the last part. You ramble a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
why.
Sorry. I tend to try and make my point multiple times when people deliberately misunderstand my point the last time I spoke to them. So I apologize.
Deliberately misunderstanding any point. You
well,
ramble.
You accused me yesterday of helping rapists by saying that sometimes women will feel unsafe in speaking up, and then you said that was me saying.
So let's how about we like move away from all of like the debate, bro, like trying to figure out so let's just see what we agree on now at this point. Okay.
Yep.
Do you agree that a woman verbally asserting a boundary can be a highly effective way of stopping people from stealthing her? Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I think that verbally asserting a boundary is very important. I think physically asserting said boundary is also important. I would disagree with the language.
Why are you... What you disagree with what I just said?
No, I disagree with the language you used in your initial tweet about.
Okay, sure. We're not talking about that. We're just saying what we agree on.
Where we agree now. Yes, verbally asserting your boundaries and telling somebody to stop is an effective way. Yes, and people.
That's good. Okay. Do we think that it should be a baseline expectation that if somebody's going to have sex with like strangers, so like people you don't have intimate, close relationships with, you should probably be expected to be able to assert these boundaries. Otherwise, you should hold off on those types of relationships until you feel comfortable doing so.
I think that is a problematic statement. So this is where I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. I think that there are always going to be situations that can arise where everybody's going to have a different line for where they feel safe asserting their boundaries. And so the logical conclusion of what you're saying is that nobody should engage in casual sex because everybody has a point at which they will not feel safe asserting their boundaries.
Do you understand that there can be a blurry line somewhere, but there are still thresholds that make things obviously good or bad? So for instance, like there's a minimum level of expected like competency to drive a car, but after you've hit that threshold, there's like a lot of different things past that point that can make it better or worse.
Yes, I do.
So, like, we can
And
say
when I
there's a
asked
minimum
you
threshold.
why you
We
set
can
your
say
minimum
we
threshold,
can say
that's
my
stealthy.
minimum threshold is that you should probably be able to assert a boundary if somebody is trying to break it, at least verbally. But obviously, like, if there are like hugely different things going on past that point, then like maybe that changes at some point. But there should be like a baseline expectation that you can like verbally assert a boundary. That shouldn't be that controversial to say. No.
Right. Except that you're saying that the line that you drew specifically was at stealthing. Like, okay, so you can verbally
Wait,
assert.
I didn't draw the line of something. I draw it at all non-consensual behavior. Anytime
Okay.
somebody's doing something unconsensual,
So
you should be able
look,
to say something.
look, for example, I've been sleeping with a girl before and she's tried to stick her thumb up my ass, okay? We didn't discuss it beforehand, but she tried to do it. Now, I'm not into that. So I said, hey, don't do that. Verbally asserted a boundary. And then she was like, oh, okay, no worries. And then we moved on, okay? So that's verbally asserting a boundary at a very low level that is way below stealthing, right?
Wait, she tried to rape you. Why is that way below stealthing?
Why is that way below stealthing? Because we hadn't discussed it beforehand and it was in a country where that's kind of normal.
To rape people?
No, girls slipping a digit is pretty normal.
I don't think that's normal in any country.
You've not been to a lot of countries then, because it is.
I've been to a lot of countries, and
girls eating ass is a pretty normal thing. Is also normal in several countries.
That's not normal in the UK. I promise you.
It's not normal in the UK, but I wasn't in the UK, was I?
Okay, maybe you're in some crazy hypersexual, but regardless, you're still getting like. What if I were to tell you that stealthing is normal? Does that make it not rape?
Well, here's the difference, right? In sex, do you, before every single sexual act you do during sex, check with the other person that this is something, like when you switch positions, you go, hey, are you down to do this position next? Or do you go with the flow of things, and if something violates a boundary and they say, hey, don't do that, you stop?
Yeah, I think it's usually that. It's more fluid than having like a specific conversation.
Now, the difference is with stealthing is that the boundary was pre-established beforehand, right? Wear a condom, don't take it off. So it's a little bit bigger of a deal than somebody doing something you don't want. What country is that normal?
Sure, it is. Like, yeah, it is a little bit bigger, sure. But like it's still pretty low on the scale of like all the egregious, crazy acts that could happen during sex, such that like just somebody stealthing you is something I would expect you to be able to speak up against.
I think that the difference is to different people, being stealthed could be a lot more serious.
Yeah, sure, but like it's very low on the levels of like how horrible or evil or fucked up does a person have to
I
do.
don't know that that's true. I think there's a lot below stealthing.
There is a lot below, but you probably agree that there's a lot above it too, right?
No, there's a fair amount above it, but it's still, it's still.
There's even a lot above it that is like that you would still expect somebody to say no to, right? Like if a guy was in the middle of fucking and he pulled out and he started to like see if he could stick it in your ass, that's arguably worse than stealthing, especially if he starts to push. But you'd still expect somebody to like verbally assert themselves there as well, no?
Do I think that a guy trying to put it in your ass without asking first, did you establish beforehand that you didn't want anal? Because if he tries and then you're like, hey, don't do that, and then he doesn't keep trying to do that, then I would say that that's not as bad as stealthing where it was a pre-established boundary. I think that pre-established boundaries, like violation of pre-established boundaries, especially trying to sneak past them, is a little worse. Now,
I mean, I would say that like there's a lot of unwritten rules to sex, and I think that like trying to go in somebody's ass when they haven't talked about it
unplanned anal is definitely against one of the unwritten rules of sex.
I would say that that's probably even more egregious than stealthing. I don't think that's that controversial to say.
I mean, I think both are rape. If you stick your dick,
both are really bad. Both are for sure bad. But like the sticking into somebody's ass, that's like holy fuck, right? Like that might be some things where if somebody does it one time successfsuccessfully, you can't notice that and stop. Like it's gonna hurt for a while. Like you might have pain for like a week or whatever, right?
If someone stealths you, you could get an STI, you could get pregnant. The long-term negative outcomes of accidental or non-consensual anal for a couple of seconds until you say stop versus stealthing for a couple of seconds until you say stop.
If they do it, well, if they go all the way to like finishing or whatever, sure. I'm just saying that like both of these are really,
you don't need to finish
really
to spread an STI. That's really important.
Yeah, naturally,
you don't need to finish to spread an STI.
Sure. Yeah, but I'm just saying that both of these are really, really bad, and in both circumstances, I would probably expect. I don't know why it's so hard to just.
Well,
say
you
that.
didn't
I feel
say
like you're like really.
You didn't say stealthing was really, really bad. You said that it wasn't a high stress situation and it wasn't serious.
Hold on. There are lots of things that aren't high stress situations that aren't too serious that are really bad. When I say they're not too serious, I mean it's like something you shouldn't be able to respond to. Do you think that at any point in this conversation, I don't think stealthing is really bad, a bad thing to do?
Well, it comes across as you saying, "Oh, it's just boys will be boys. It's just guys being."
Wait. What do you mean when I say boys will be boys? What does that mean? What do you think
you very much
point.
said it's just guys being horny and trying to push their luck. That was
What do you think that
literally
means?
what
What am I saying when I say that, though? That it's okay to do that? That it's a good thing to do that?
It feels like that. Yeah, it feels like you're minimizing it. It feels like minimizing.
Do you think that
language.
might be a problem with the assumptions that you're making about how people talk about sex?
I mean,
That if
it
somebody
could be-
descriptively says like, "Hey, guys do this thing," or "Women do this thing," like, "Oh, you're saying guys should do this thing?" Or
No, I
"Women
didn't say
should do
you.
this
I
thing?"
didn't say you should. This is misrepresenting my argument again. Again, I didn't say you said that people should do it. I never even said that you said that it wasn't a negative.
Okay.
I said that you were minimizing it. It's
Just to
minimizing
be clear,
language.
when you say boys will be boys, that's what that's implying. Like men act that way, and they're going to. You know, they should. They're men. Boys will be boys.
No, boys will be boys that's bad, but it's okay because boys will be boys. That's what that argument's always.
Well,
been.
but if you're saying that it's okay, then you're saying like, yeah, they should do it. It's okay, right? Why wouldn't you if the guy likes it, right?
You know, it's not a big deal. It's what boys will be boys means. It's not that it's not bad. It's that it's not a big deal, which is what minimizing language is. You are minimizing the impact of stealthing by saying, you know, it's just guys sort of pushing their luck. They're trying to rape somebody. That's what they're doing.
I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm trying to make people understand how it happens, rather than using like the ultra charged like it's rape, and it's like it's not necessarily like
I mean, do you know you are an expert on rape? Clearly, you told me yesterday. You know so much more about it than me. Do you know what rape is a crime of? Like all sexual assaults.
What do you mean? I don't know.
And these violations of Brown. Like, what is the motivation behind rape? What is the motivation behind stealthing and rape and all of these sexual assault?
I hope you're not going to say power. It super depends on the situation.
Obviously, it's dependent on the situation, but generally, what's the big overlap then? What's the biggest overlap between other felony crimes and rape? It's quite a surprising one.
I don't know. Wetting the bed.
Arson. The overlap between arsonists
setting things
and rapists.
on fire.
Yeah. And
okay, but like now you're talking about but now we're talking about like the criminal charge of rape and not like the type like the
obviously there's frat boy rape all the time. The vast majority
I'm not even talking about frat boy rape.
reported.
Even what we're talking about, if I had to guess, my guess would be like 1% of all the stealthing in the world gets like charged as rape. Like the vast majority of people that stealth probably never get charged with rape because that's like an impossible accusation to go through in court. You'd never be able to do that.
Oh no, people have successfully prosecuted on stealthing. I mean, it's becoming more and more acceptable to do that kind of thing.
Do you think it's higher or lower than one? Wait. Do you think it's higher or lower than 1% of stealthers have been like charged with a crime? Because my understanding is there's literally only one state in the entire U.S. where it's even illegal.
It's only about 15% of men who rape people with any form of rape who ever end up seeing any kind of consequences.
So trying to say that like
rape culture
rapists
is ridiculous. Brock Turner was caught raping an unconscious woman in an alleyway and got 3 months because he's a good swimmer.
But this isn't the type of rape that we're talking about generally. Like stealthers are not these people. They're not arsonists. They're not doing this type of thing.
I think that people who commit sexual assault are people who commit sexual assault. If you're willing to stealth somebody, there is something in your head that says that their consent is not necessary, right? So
or it's that you think that the violation isn't that big of a deal.
I don't think that's true. I don't think people, if they didn't think it was that big of a deal, they wouldn't be trying to hide it or do it stealthily.
But that's how guys pursue women all the time, right? This is where rape culture comes from. It's because it's normalized that guys are pushing for things and they push and push and push. And as long as the girl doesn't explicitly say no or catch them doing something, like it's okay.
Your language, your minimizing language perpetuates that.
Okay.
Do you not see that? That's my point.
No,
your minimizing language perpetuates that.
So the problem is that the way that people talk about rape and rapists is that as long as I avoid the ultra scary guys that are arsonists or are likely to be arsonists, I'm not going to run into any rapists. But the reality is that the boyfriend that you have, the guy that you're hooking up with, the dude you met on Tinder, these are all people that could be potential rapists.
But this is a straw man argument because I never said that wasn't true. I never made the argument that
why did you make the comparison and say that rapes overlap with arsonists? Can you explain that?
Because the psychology behind sexual assault and rape is pretty consistent, okay? So the people who do the super serious rapes are also the arsonists, but also why would we talk about the super rape are also the people who commit marital rape are also the people who commit domestic violence, which is another act of power. This overlap goes across the entire scale. I was giving you the extreme to make the point very clear.
So do you think there's a large overlap between people that stealth and arsonists?
Again, that's the extreme, right? People who are willing to be an arsonist are probably the people who are willing to be an arsonist are probably also willing to commit or want to commit more extreme acts of rape.
But why are we?
People who have less of a power because it's still going to be a power complex thing in the majority of cases. It's going to be about power. It's going to be about...
Do you think the majority of people
dominance.
that stealth are doing it for power?
I think they're doing it because they have that part of their brain that wants power. I think that they're that type of personality. Yes, I think if you found the majority of people who stealth and you did a study, I think the majority of those people would be the same kind of psychological profile, just to a lesser extent. Yes, I believe that.
Okay.
Because have you ever been tempted to stealth somebody?
No.
No. Okay. So it's not just a guy being horny, because I've never been tempted to stealth anybody, and I've been horny as fuck before. Okay? But I've never been tempted to stealth during sexual intercourse at any point in my life.
Yep. Okay.
So what mindset does a guy have to have in order to be willing to do that?
Okay. Am I going to be able to answer, or are you going to come
Yeah,
back?
go for it.
Okay. I think that there is a fundamental misunderstanding of rape and rape culture happening in this and almost every conversation related to rape. The reason why we have a rape culture isn't because there are a lot of violent men with the proclivity to rape, men that might have overlaps with arsonists or other types of criminal behavior. If we had those types of people in society, we wouldn't need a rape culture. We would just have a ton of rapists. The problem with rape culture is that it takes men that otherwise wouldn't be rapists, and it gives them a set of behaviors and actions that they perform that kind of sort of turn them into rapists. So when we have a dating and a sex culture where guys are told to chase, and women are told that if you have too much sex, you're a slut and a bad person, so you need to deny, hoping that the guy pushes hard enough to fuck you, that when we have a culture like this, guys end up getting incentivized into a whole bunch of really shitty sexual practices and behaviors. As a guy, you're not supposed to ask if she's comfortable or if she wants to do something because you might blow your shot. As a guy, you're supposed to keep pushing for more and more because she'll never offer more. So when you're telling people to act this way in sexual relationships, it's not surprising that you might get into a scenario where a guy is like, fuck it, I'm going to pull the condom off. It'll feel better for both of us. She'll like it. Like, fuck it, and we'll do it. That guy isn't a like criminal mastermind or an arsonist or a violent, like rapist, sexual assaulter. What he's doing, we could call it rape or sexual assault. That's fine. But the problem is it's an otherwise normal person that's getting horny and is acting stupidly because the culture that he exists within basically gives him an excuse or permission to push past a person's boundaries. But that same type of person is not an evil person that will physically fight and murder somebody that's resisting the rape. It's the kind of person that if you were to say, hey, stop doing that, they'll probably be like, oh, fuck, okay. And then they'll stop doing that.
Okay. So, alternative hypothesis, right? This culture exists. I don't disagree with you on that fact. There is a culture exactly as you described. But the fact is, the vast majority of men don't stealth in that culture. The vast majority of men don't actually push beyond, reasonable. And I say that with air quotes because I think that the overall culture is too pushy. But don't push beyond reasonable boundaries. And I think that the men who do stealth are the kind of people who would do that kind of thing. And they are operating within this culture, which maybe allows them to do this, but they have to have that predisposition first. Yeah? Because otherwise, all men would try it. You exist in the same culture. You grew up in the same culture. I exist in the same culture. I grew up in the same culture. Every guy in your chat exists in the same culture and grew up in the same culture.
We're having an issue where, I am saying that, A is sometimes B, and you're saying, B is sometimes C, therefore A is, there's a connection on the chain that we're missing, okay? What I'm saying is that the vast majority of men probably wouldn't stealth. We both agree with that. I'm not arguing against that. But what I'm saying is the vast majority of men that do stealth, the majority percentage of that minority percentage would be stopped with a verbal confrontation. That's what I'm saying. Even of the men that do stealth, the majority of them are not violent
the majority of
arsonist
men who
people
would rape in any way. The majority of men who would rape in any way would be stopped by a verbal or slight physical confrontation.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Yes.
That's not a fact I am disputing at any point. What I'm saying is the fact that they're willing to stealth means that they are willing to violate consent, and some of them will escalate further. And as a result, because we don't have proper sexual education, we don't have a good basis for women or men growing up, that as a result, some women feel afraid when these things happen and feel unable to speak up. And I do not think that the correct solution to that, or the correct discourse to have, is to mock those women online regardless of whether you like them or not, or care about them or not, I do not think that that is a helpful or positive discourse in any way. I think it's a terrible fucking take. I think it's a terrible way to put forward, even if your argument was completely sound, which I have my issues with it. I think that the men who are willing to stealth on average are going to be a lot worse than men who would never stealth when it comes to violence or sexual assault or anything like that, because they're willing to rape. But I think the main issue here, the main disconnect that we have, is that, to me, I think that education is important and not mocking someone who's already had it happen to them. I don't think that
if we want to have a
productive.
conversation about whether we should mock somebody online, that's a fine conversation. But
Oh no, we
now
can
it
mock
sounds
people
like
online. That's fine.
now it sounds
But
like at
there are
this
lines.
point, now it sounds like at this point we are in full agreement then that women should be able to verbally assert boundaries. That verbally asserting boundaries is a very effective way at avoiding even confrontations that are more violent than stealthing.
Yep.
And then the final one, I don't know if we're at this point or not yet, but that there should probably be an expectation that you're capable of doing this before you go out and you engage in like random sexual intercourse with people. You should hopefully be able to feel confident that you can assert yourself verbally. That doesn't mean that you can do it in like the most violent, horrible situations, but there should be like a baseline expectation, just like there should be with men. You should be expected that when you're with a woman, you can maintain your head, and just because you're horny, you're not going to push for shit that that you shouldn't be.
Oh.
If you feel like you're too horny to handle it, then you probably, as a guy, shouldn't be engaging in casual sex yet, because you might go rape somebody. And if you're a woman and you feel like you can't verbally assert a boundary, you probably shouldn't be engaging in casual sex yet, because you might be a rape victim. You don't have to be, because it's so easy for you to avoid it if you take like some of the proper steps
And
most
again,
of the time to avoid it.
If this has been like this is a new argument as far as I'm concerned, based on what you tweeted. It's no. You can say that, but one is this is a general standard that we should strive for, and the other is in your specific situation, you should stop having sex because you didn't feel safe in this situation that I have very little information about. They're different things.
I'm not talking about one particular person. Whenever I'm talking on a case on
You
Twitter,
were talking about one particular person. You literally said she should stop having casual sex. Like, it's not my fault that I don't know that when you are that when you're talking about a specific person,
I don't
on Twitter,
even know who
you
that
are
person
generalizing.
is. Okay, so then here's a question.
It doesn't matter.
Do you agree then? So then, do you agree with all of the advice in general? You just don't like that I built this all off of quote tweeting that one person?
I think that you could have quote tweeted that person and said it in a general way, and it would have been a lot more acceptable. I think that pushing for education is something I've done for years. Again, I used to volunteer and teach women's self-defense classes because I think it's important. Okay?
Okay, so then we fully agree on everything. The only topic of this conversation we disagree on is whether or not I should have used this one person's case as an opportunity to give this general advice, because maybe it wouldn't have applied in their case, and I don't know the specific details of that person.
You could have given the general advice based on their case. You could have definitely used that tweet that was going a little bit viral, and you could have retweeted it in a way.
Isn't that what my tweets did though? Because didn't he say, if you don't feel comfortable asserting it, like he literally qualified it with like, if this is something you're not comfortable with, then you shouldn't have casual sex? Isn't that what he said though?
But he targeted it at her. He mentioned that it had happened before. And you specifically targeted against her so many times.
Because she said it happened 3 times and she didn't want to say anything because it was awkward. Are we going to go back to the debate on what the word awkward means?
Oh my God. I don't want to rehash that one. I mean, look, if you don't understand the fact that some people use minimizing language when they're talking about things that have happened to them, then that's fine. You don't get it. That's cool.
Well, sure, but like if they are using minimizing language, isn't that then their fault? Isn't that their problem then, that the way that they're communicating on a public platform might lead people to think that like, man, sometimes if you feel awkward in certain circumstances, you just shouldn't
trauma. Destiny, you say you've experienced trauma, right?
I don't think I've said I've experienced trauma, but
well, you said you were beaten as a child.
Not necessarily beat. I think I've been through traumatic events, but I'm not not a trauma person or whatever. But like I've been through pretty adverse scenarios. But like regardless, like just because you've been through
scenarios, do you talk about them like in dead serious language every time you talk about them?
I do, but I process things. I process things in a different way, so I do. But it's a different thing. But I understand that not everybody's gonna. I understand that everybody's gonna. What I'm saying is that like, yes, I make jokes about everything. But what I'm saying is that like you. What? Go ahead.
That's what she did, right? She said it was awkward instead of saying it was harmful or whatever. It was pretty clear from her follow-up tweets, which you continued to mock, that it was serious for her and that she was upset about it. So like, it's not a really good argument to say, oh, well, the first tweet said it was awkward, because you kept going.
We can say that there might be like other context that changes it significantly. I personally don't think there is. But when somebody is out there tweeting saying this has happened 3 times and I got raped a 4th time, like, I think that that's enough information. Like, okay, it's time to take a step back and like rethink your approach to casual sex. That's enough information. That would be enough information for me for like, if a guy were to tweet out, you know what? I've been in 3 different sexual scenarios and I ended up like raping a woman like every time. Like, this is like super fucked up. I'd probably like, hey, you sound like you need to take a step back and figure out what the fuck is going on if this is happening
go
to
to prison because you raped someone 3 times.
Not go to prison. No, it depends on what depends on what we're talking about, right?
If you
it might be that
you
like
just said if a guy's like, I've been in sexual situations and I've raped someone every time, that's prison to me. Just
it depends on what we're talking about. There are do you agree that there are types of rape that can happen that aren't necessarily somebody's fault, or that might be just the result of like really shitty communication, or it might be the result of like just like people are inadequate in addressing like what's happening in the heat of like a sexual moment, or do you think that's an impossibility?
Could you describe one? Could you give me a hypothetical?
Yeah, sure. So I might have even used this yesterday. But this is like a really common one, right? Say that 2 people go to sleep. Say that they're cuddling when they're sleeping. The guy wakes up. He's kind of got a boner. He starts like touching the woman a little bit. She's kind of like touching her back. She rubs her booty against him. And the guy starts fucking her. And then she wakes up more and she's like, I'm not into this. I don't want to do this actually. And they didn't talk about it beforehand. And she says like, hey, can you stop? And the guy's like, oh yeah, shit. Sorry. I thought you were into it. And then they stop. In that case, I think you could say that like the guy raped the woman. That's what happened.
No, he absolutely did. That's rape.
Yeah. But like, is this like a... Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't do that. But is this like he needs to go to prison and this is a horrible, absolutely terrible?
He needs to be punished. Yeah, I think if somebody does that, they need to be punished, and we should teach people not to fucking do that. Like what?
I think that sexual situations are a little bit more complicated than just saying that like that's the example of a person that needs to be punished.
I don't think that one is that complex. I don't think that if that's the best hypothetical you can give of like a rape situation that isn't bad, that a woman is asleep and you decide to fuck them, like. If you're in a long-term relationship and you've had sex before, it's a bit more nuanced. But even then, like, she probably wouldn't call it rape. She'd be like, hey, don't do that. Like, it depends on the impact on the person. If it's just a girl that you've gone to bed with, but you've never slept with before, you know, you're cuddling, you got along.
Hold on. Obviously, I'm talking about somebody you have an ongoing... I'm not saying that this is like a random girl that you're like, just happen to be in bed with. Of course,
so wait, is marital rape not bad then? Do you think marital rape should be legal? Like, because you're married, right?
No, hold on. Wait, hold on. And we're getting into like crazy, like it depends on what we're talking about, right? Like the sleeping example is like the most common thing I can think of. I've been with a lot of girls that are under the assumption that if we fell asleep fucking, they can wake me up with sex. They just assume that, whether it's because guys are always ready to go or whatever, they've done it. And there have been times where I've woken up and, you know, I'm like, oh, sure, like this is fine. And I've gone along with it. I got raped there though, technically, right? You would agree with that, right? Would you agree? So like the last time that I had a thing with my partner and another girl, when I woke up to this girl fucking me. And I never had a conversation of like, yeah, you can do this to me while I'm sleeping. I woke up in the middle of it happening. You agree that like I got raped there, right? You have to agree with that.
I mean, yeah, she had sex with you without consent, right? But here's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The impact on you is also important. If you enjoyed that, then it's, you know, like something that
wait, no, wait, hold on. Now, this is a part where I can get a huge dunk on you, but be careful with your phrasing here, okay?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you, during that act, then consented by saying, yeah, continue it, okay? Let me make that very clear. You're right. The enjoy is a bad way to put it. If you then consent, it's no longer rape ongoing from that point, yes?
And I totally agree with what you're saying. 1,000,000%, okay?
But she still shouldn't have done it.
No. I agree. I'm so glad you said this. I agree with you 1,000,000%. But this is what I say this is what I mean when I say these situations are complicated. Because what you just described could literally be the same thought process as a guy who's stealthing. He's like, listen, we're doing this particular thing. I'm gonna take my condom off. We're both gonna like it more. And then he starts doing it. And it might be the case that there are times when a girl's like, man, fuck, did you take the condom off? This feels way fucking better. Would you say in that case that like the stealthing then it became okay? Because even though it started off as rape, they consented later on?
Can I finish?
Go for it.
She still shouldn't have done it, okay? And if you had wanted to press charges for rape, I would have supported you on that.
Sure, I understand, but point. Like the fact that like we
so
can
the fact
be,
that you
like,
chose to overlook it, the fact you chose to overlook it does not make it any less bad. No, it doesn't.
But it makes it not. But she still raped me, right?
Yeah, she did. And you
why shouldn't the rapist?
You weren't hurt by it, but no.
But are you saying that like the rapist should be punished here, or this rapist shouldn't be punished?
I'm saying a rapist should be punished if the person who was raped wants them to be punished. I think that is the metric, right? If the person who was raped thinks punishment...
We don't treat any other crime like this, though, no? These are like...
If you're stolen from... If someone steals from you and you don't press charges, what happens to them? Are they punished or not?
Well, it depends on if it's a civil or a criminal case. In a civil case, it's only if you press charges. But like for criminal things, I think like rape is like a criminal thing. It doesn't matter if the victim wants to
Oh no,
or doesn't want to.
I was assaulted and I dropped charges. You can drop charges for assault. You can drop
sure,
assault
but
charges.
the reason why, hold on, the reason why these charges are dropped, I don't think is a matter of like, well, I just don't want the criminal charges. I think it's a matter of like, if you don't personally want to push charges and you can't be a witness to it, then they have no case. The state has no case. But like, for instance, like if somebody murders somebody, that's always going to be.
For this rape situation that you talked about? If you'd gone to the police and said she raped me, she woke me up fucking me, right? And would that not have been rape? And so you have decided to be a witness to it, and they only drop it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying that, like, for criminal things, it's not a matter. So here's an example. So when you mentioned assault, if there's like a really bad battery where you've got like a guy beats the shit out of somebody in front of like 10 witnesses in a restaurant or whatever, if that person doesn't want to press charges, I think the state will still do it. They'll still get you on bad. Like,
and if there's a really bad rape where someone rapes someone in front of 10 other people, but the person who got raped doesn't want to press charges, I think they might still press charges.
It might be in that case. Yeah, I think it would depend on whatever. But yeah,
for statutory rape, the exact same thing. Like, as I said,
well, but hold on, no, wait, but that's what I wait.
In a lot of situations, whether
the exact same thing, meaning that like something can be a crime even if the other person doesn't like agree that it is, or even if the other person isn't affected. That was my point.
Yeah, but that could happen for rape too. But what I'm saying is, in my opinion, just like with assault, if you are assaulted, you can choose. If you're assaulted and there aren't other witnesses and it wasn't super grievous and all of that, you can choose not to press charges, and that's fine. That doesn't make the assault okay. It just means you chose not to criminally prosecute.
I'm just saying, it seems weird that like if two people are in a sexual moment and one person pushes too hard and they go past the boundary, and we can even say they end up raping a person or whatever, the idea that like that person should always be punished or whatever, that just seems like, it seems to be like a very binary reading of
No, I think that if the victim feels victimized, he should be punished. I think it is up to the victim. If you, Destiny, genuinely, if you had decided to go on Twitter and say, I'm pressing charges against this girl, you know, we had a threesome the night before, I woke up and she was riding me, I did not consent to that, I think that is rape, and I would like to press charges for it, I would be behind you on that. I think most people would be like, yeah, that's fucked up. They shouldn't have done that, and you didn't want that, so that's rape. And I think that that is a fair take to say that charges should be pressed in that situation. I think that because you woke up and you were like, yeah, I'm down, that's fine, I forgive you for the act of rape, which is your right, I guess. Like, that's fine, but we should teach people not to do that shit. You shouldn't rape somebody up with sex if you haven't discussed that in the past.
We should teach people, yeah, we should teach people, I agree it. I'm just saying that, like, man, that's like, it's such a binary reading. It's such a black and white reading on like right and wrong and rape and not rape or whatever, that like I think these situations are a bit more fluid.
You don't think that if a girl gets woken up by a guy fucking her and she feels victimized, she feels violated, you don't think she should be allowed to press charges for rape?
I think it depends on the situation.
Okay, they're in a relationship, they fell asleep together, and then he woke her up fucking her, and she's like, I did not want this, I did not ask for this, I wasn't feeling it today, or, you know, I'm ovulating and I don't want to get pregnant, whatever it is, right? And she's like, this was unacceptable. She tells him to stop. He stops, but she's like, that was rape. And she reports him for rape.
Yeah, so in that circumstance, no, I don't think he should be. If he stops when she mentions it, I don't think that should be like he's getting prosecuted for rape type of thing. I just
fundamentally disagree with you. I don't think that it should be the exact same, like, sentence as somebody who, like, just rapes somebody, you know, like maybe it wouldn't be as serious.
Like, I understand
if she feels victimized, if there's a victim, there's a crime, right? Like that's not true. In the case of rape, case of rape, if there's a victim, there's a fucking crime. I'm sorry.
I don't agree. Not all the time. I think that the situation is a bit more fluid than that. There can be like expectations, like even for instance, what you said, where you were in some area having sex with somebody and they basically raped you by trying to stick a finger up your butt. That's like rape. But like, it sounds like in that culture and what the expectation and everything is like, okay, well,
they didn't stick a digit up my arse because, you know, they started massaging it and I was like, hey, not for me. But you understand.
But there might be some people that would have just gone for it, right? Would you say that in that case, that in that culture, in that country, they should be charged for rape if they stopped as soon as you said something?
I mean, yeah, I if somebody just did that and I established that it's not something I wanted, or I hadn't established that it was something I wanted, I would be like, that's fucked up. Yeah, that's bad. That's sexual assault. Like, at the very least, get them a sexual assault charge. Like,
I think the problem is that there's a lot of interactions that happen that like we don't, and I wish we would, but we just don't go over everything 100% like verbally. We just don't say, like, there are so many different sexual interactions where somebody does something and the other person's like, hey, I don't want you to do that. I don't like this idea that like, that's a rapist, charge him. That's a rapist, charge him. Like, I feel like the situations need to be treated a bit more fluidly, especially if when confronted, the person stops. So like the sleep sex thing is really common. People think like, well, if I fuck you while you're awake, you should it should be okay to fuck you while you're asleep. That's not true all the time. You should absolutely talk beforehand. But if somebody tries that, and then when the other person wakes up and they're like, hey, I don't like this, and the other person's like, oh shit, my bad, I thought you would, that was my mistake. The idea that like they need to have some type of criminal charge for this is like, I just feel like that's such a narrow reading.
Need to. I say if the other party believes they need to, then that's up to the other party. I think that the injured party has the right to go and report it and have it punished if they believe that it was a violation of themselves, right? Like no, insertion didn't happen. I never said that.
I'm gonna. So I'll ask a question. This is gonna feel like almost like a little bit of a gotcha. You'll see where I'm going. I'm curious. Like, so some guys are very, very, very sensitive about their balls. They don't want anybody to touch them ever. That's just like they're just not comfortable with it. Other guys like it a lot. Let's say the girl's like, I want to give you a blowjob. And you're like, okay, cool, and you agree to that. And let's say that a girl starts blowing you, and then in the middle of that, she reaches up and she like gives your balls a good squeeze. Not like she's trying to fucking cock and ball torture you, but she just gives them a squeeze, right? And the guy's like, whoa, I didn't agree to that. I don't want you to touch me like that. Like, I think I need to stop this scenario now. Like, I'm a little uncomfortable. Do you think in that case that the guy's like, I kind of want to push, like, I want to push charges against her for sexual assault, he should have the right to do that?
Do you realize how like ridiculous the jump from waking somebody up with full-blown penetrative sex and somebody squeezing your balls when they're already blowing you is, and that there is like an understanding that there's got to be a general understanding of like how severe things are. And I think that we disagree on where severity is. I don't think that a girl massaging my asshole was rape. If I'd said no and then she'd shoved her thumb up there anywhere, that's where I'd say it was rape.
We're not talking about saying no. We're talking about like,
if she grabs your balls during a blowjob and you say, hey, don't do that, there wasn't really a violation, right? Like, she touched your testicles, but she's blowing you. It's not the same thing as waking somebody up with sex. I agree.
And again, like, I hate I'm not equating anything. I was just asking a question to see where you draw the line. Okay. I'm not equating.
Okay. If you're asking me, do I believe there is a line somewhere where non-verbal communication or mistakes can happen? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This is what is confusing me, because I think it sounds like in your head, I think you actually have a pretty good understanding of this, more than I definitely thought yesterday. But you just seem very unwilling.
Okay, dude, like, gonna be completely honest with you. Yesterday, I've been having health issues recently, and yesterday I was high off my tits.
That's fine, sure. But I'm just saying, it sounds like in your head, I feel like you actually have a good understanding of how all these concepts connect, but it just seems like sometimes you draw the lines in like really weird areas, or you don't understand how people draw those areas. So you said something about like this that I totally agree with, but it's not a good assumption to make. But you agree with this, right? There is a general understanding that when you're giving a blowjob, somebody might touch your balls, right? That is the case. And now, should you talk about it beforehand? I think it's good to talk about most things beforehand. That's fine. Do you like this? Do you not like this? We're not always doing it. It might be the case, though, that with some guys, say for the sleep sex things, there's a general understanding that if you're willing to fuck somebody one time, you're definitely willing to get fucked in your sleep. You're definitely willing to, right? That might be a general understanding that some people have.
I don't think that's a general understanding, though. I disagree.
I'm just
saying,
do you think that there might be some people that think that?
Yeah. But I think that those people
do you think that there might be? No, hold on. How many times when we go on the internet do we see guys
view sex and boundaries? I think that those people have need an education. Those people need
sure, and I agree with you that there should be. I don't disagree with that. But how many times online have you read things where guys are like, the best way to wake up is a girl giving you a blowjob? This is like the dream. I love. Oh my god, this is the best way to wake up. I don't think it's unfathomable that a woman might wake up and they're like, oh my god, I'm gonna give this guy a blowjob, wake him up. It's gonna be so sexy, and then she does, and the guy's like, I have to pee in the morning. Like, this isn't sexy at all. I don't like this. Right? I don't think in that case that it's like the woman is a rapist. I think that like both people are working on a general understanding of what their person wants, and sometimes somebody's wrong and they push a boundary or break a boundary or even rape or sexually assault somebody, but it's not like this is a horrible person. They need to be punished for it, even if one person is made to feel uncomfortable, because these situations are more fluid than that.
Yeah, the situations are nuanced. So again, I think that it's like, okay, so someone's hooked up with someone one time, right? They had a one-night stand, and both people were drinking, so both people were drunk. And then in the morning, the guy decides to wake the woman up with sex. That's a very different wake-up sex scenario than somebody you've been dating for 5 years, and you think, oh, this will be sexy, and then they don't like it. And I think that one would be much more likely to push charges than the other. Yeah, in
But
both cases, it is still wrong.
yeah.
But
But in both
that's
cases, I don't know if it's like the worst thing in the world. It's like you push too hard and like this was a thing that they didn't like and it's not good. And you yourself said, hold on, you yourself said earlier, you said something. You were like, well, if the other person ends up liking it, it's not a big deal, which is how a lot of guys,
No,
I'm not
it's
saying
not a
you're
big
part of
deal
rape culture,
to
but a
them.
lot of, sure, but I'm saying that a lot of guys operate under that assumption because girls are told that if you agree to sex and you're really sexy and you do all this shit, you're a slut, you're a whore, you're promiscuous, you're disgusting, you're worthless. So girls are like by default kind of like playing like, okay, I'm not gonna say yeah, or I'm not gonna like push for this, or like I'm gonna let the guy make the moves. And if the guy is thinking if I keep pushing, she's gonna like this, she's gonna like this, she's gonna like this, it's not gonna be surprising that eventually, as a guy, you're gonna run up to a boundary, or even as a girl sometimes, where it's like, fuck, I shouldn't have gone that far. That was uncomfortable for them.
My position is if somebody feels victimized and violated, that's kind of up to them. And so the general thing that you should do is learn to not do the things that might make people feel victimized. And I think that there are very, very few people on this earth who would be like, you touched my balls, that's rape. And I think that there's, a line where you draw when you're like, okay, you're being ridiculous now. And I don't think that that line extends to intercourse. I don't think that that line extends to somebody waking you up with sex when you haven't discussed it beforehand. I just don't think that the line extends that far. I think that that is actually a violation of somebody's consent. And I think the violation of consent is important. I think that we should teach people about consent. And I do think that there isn't enough education and that a lot of guys do have these beliefs.
I don't
that doesn't mean these beliefs aren't fucked up.
I don't
and
disagree with
mean
anything. I don't disagree
that we
with
shouldn't
anything
punish these fucked up behaviors.
Well, but that's the, yeah. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, that like the conversation should be better. You shouldn't run into these situations where men are pushing. There should be situations where women feel safer to say no and yes, where they don't feel like they're safer. I don't disagree with any of that. I just don't like when we talk about like the mens rea, the state of mind of a person that is doing a rape. This is the thing that I just don't think that all the time when we talk about it publicly, we just don't have a good understanding of it. It's not an evil, horrible, arsonist personality type person that's trying to rape. It's usually just a guy that's being stupid, horny, and is pushing too far. And all the times that these things happen, it doesn't need to be met with like, no,
there is a correlation between the people who push too far. If you're asking me if I think that we should have different classifications of different tiers of rape and that the wake-up sex tier of rape should be punished less severely than aggravated rape, I agree on that. But so does the legal system. That's why the punishment for rape can vary so wildly, right? Like, I think that the legal system is broken and we don't punish enough people. I think that a lot of people get away with it, again, because of institutionalized sexism and all of that. But I also think that there needs to be a punishment, even if the wake-up sex scenario, the girl complains and the guy doesn't go to prison for it, but he does community service for it. It's like, no, you did a bad thing. Bad. Learn your lesson. Go do community service or some shit. Like, even that is better than nothing. Now, in that particular example,
I don't even know if to like do community, but this is the problem. I don't know if this fixes the problem because, as I said in the very beginning of this conversation, the problem is on both sides. This is the issue: is that women suck when it comes to communicating about sex-related stuff, and men suck when it comes to understanding what they should be communicating about sex-related stuff. In our society right now, women are generally set up to be the pussy guardians or the gatekeepers, and men are set up to chase until they can break down the barriers and get in. And as long as that situation is set up in society, it's going to take both sides working against it to change
society
it.
tries to push that situation, but I don't necessarily believe that that's what's going on. I don't think women particularly suck at communicating when it comes to sex. I mean,
I will tell you, if you are you married or anything, or
I'm married. Yeah.
Maybe that's, you can't ask your wife this because obviously it's not shitty, but like if like one of the most common things that comes up, like women will talk to their groups of friends all the time before they talk to their partners about how bad their sex is or how horrible the situation is or how they like, oh,
that's
like,
a different situation. That's about
it's the exact
bad,
same.
Like they don't want to emasculate people. That's about not wanting to emasculate
but that's the same
partner.
thing. Even what you're saying there, that you don't want to emasculate a partner by criticizing him. That's an issue with our culture, with our communication. Some women won't give feedback to men because they're worried they'll make the guy feel bad. And some guys suck at taking feedback.
That's not the same thing about communicating consent. That's not.
It absolutely is, because all of these things go together. Communicating consent, communicating what you like or don't like during a sexual scenario, all of these things are part of the same awkward, difficult, confusing, and horny induced conversation.
But I would say that the difference between a woman being able to communicate with a long-term partner, whether they're bad in bed, and the ability of a woman to communicate whether they consent to sex with a certain person are very different things. I would say that women actually are pretty good at communicating that they don't want to have sex with somebody, or they do want to have sex with somebody, because they have to do it all the time because they get constantly hit on. So that's just my take, right? Like, from the tiny pool of women that I have interacted with in my life, because, you know, you're the man who fucks, so clearly you have far more experience. But my experience is that women are actually relatively good at communicating consent, and I would argue better at it than men on average. So,
but that might be the case, that you might be a person that's really good at making a woman feel like she can communicate that. You might not be the type of person that leans into a woman really hard and makes her feel uncomfortable saying something. So, like, I think that in most of my experiences, women tend to be comfortable saying no, but that's because I've taken a great deal of time to make sure that they feel comfortable. But if I was somebody that was leaning really aggressively into it, maybe I'll never hear a no in my life, because this is the problem too with people saying, like,
that's
consent.
the woman's fault because guys are too aggressive.
No, it's everybody's problem, and it's everybody can take steps. I'm not trying to, this like first grade notion of figuring out who's at fault. That's a boring and worthless conversation that gets nobody anywhere. The question is what can we do to fix the problem? How do we ameliorate the situation? And the reality is
sexual education.
Yes, for men and women.
Oh yeah,
that's the point.
Absolutely, for men and women. But
yes,
the main issue is men. When you look,
no, it's not. The main issue is everybody. It takes two people to have sex.
It doesn't take two people to rape. Well, technically
it does, but it doesn't
absolutely
take the consent
of two people. It doesn't take the consent of two people to rape.
Usually it takes some level of consent from the woman to get a rape. Yes, they either consented to go out to a certain area, they consented to be in a certain area alone, they consented to be in a certain situation. Like, that's the whole issue. That's why this is so complicated. And that's why it's not as easy as just saying, like, well, one man did something totally against the desire of another woman. If it was that easy, bro, nobody would get raped, because women would just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to avoid non-consensual situations. But it's not that easy. The problem is a lot of rape will happen 3 drinks of wine into being on somebody's couch, and then you're like, fuck, I don't know if I actually want to fuck this guy. I'm not feeling that anymore, but I'm in his apartment, or even worse, he's already in my apartment, and now you're like, fuck, I don't know what to do. This is why it's so complicated.
I am completely, like, just stunned by that. I know that you'll say it's because I'm an idiot, right? Like, I'm not as intelligent as you. Okay, I get it. Like, you're debate bro.
I'm being really hard not to use any ad homs. I don't know why you're trying to do it to yourself.
No,
but
like, well, you did it yesterday, a fair amount.
Well, but yesterday you admitted that you were really high, and we came into that conversation, you shitting on me as a father. So of course I'm coming, but I'm trying really hard right now. I still
think you're a pretty shitty father, but that's
great. I don't care about your opinion. Sure, we don't have to, but.
Also,
but go ahead.
I just want to make it very clear, because this is something I did not know your height at all. I'd never heard anything about your height. I'd actually never heard any of the jokes about your height. When I called you a gnome, it's because of the beard and the way you look. It was not about. It's just because garden gnome was the first thing that
makes me feel so much better.
It wasn't a height insult. Like, I know now that you are 5'8", and that's a fine height. All right, you're taller than Moist Critical, and he's the perfect height. So it's all good, dude. Like, don't worry about it.
Well, just finish what you were going to say before you started the self-deprecation.
The self-deprecation?
Before the
because I'm an idiot?
No, I'm not saying you're an idiot. I was saying you were going to make a point, and then you...
No. The self-deprecation of calling myself an idiot. I've actually completely lost my point. Went on a bit of a...
So I mentioned that, like, a lot of the rapes happen because a woman has consented.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then she's like, now at this point, I want to not do it
My
anymore.
argument there would be that it's kind of fucked up to say, because a woman decided to go on a date and then she got raped, it's partly her fault because she decided to go on a date, because, like, people should be able to date without being raped, right? The fault there lies with the guy who did the rape on the date.
But that's not what's happening, though, right? People are dating and getting raped, so that's what we have to look at.
So people are dating and getting raped, so no one should date because date rape happens? Like,
no, it means that you have to be able to take a certain level of agency over yourself and your future in order to make sure that you don't end up in these situations.
Yeah, but no matter how careful women are, like, you could be the most careful woman in the world.
No. No matter how careful you are. No. Stop. We're not talking about preventing 100% of rapes. No matter how careful you drive, you could still drive. You can still die in a car accident. That doesn't mean that you don't wear your seatbelt, or you don't practice defensive driving, or you don't drive the speed limit, or you don't pay attention to traffic signals. Same way, like, yeah, there might be an unavoidable situation where, like, a woman gets raped and there's nothing she could have done. That it could happen, but those are the vast minority of cases.
But while I'm arguing that it's great to educate women on how to keep themselves safe, I do not think that it is fair to say, well, both people are at fault here when this woman got raped because she didn't take every safety precaution possible. That's like you getting in a car accident and
have I used the word fault ever?
Well,
I'm
you
not.
said
I'm,
to
when am I
blame.
ever?
I find
No, I never
fault and
said to.
blame.
I'm saying that there are different levels of responsibility or agency that we can have over
Okay,
ourselves. I'm not saying
but
that
if a bad
if
thing's
somebody
happened,
rapes you, the fault is like 100% on the rapist, unless there's some crazy shit going on.
but the
fault is generally,
responsibility isn't.
yes, correct. The responsibility is on all
So
of us to take the best
could you
care of ourselves
explain
possible.
the
Yes.
difference in a negative situation between responsibility and fault?
Sure. If I'm driving through an intersection and I see that there's a guy approaching from the right and he looks like he's driving a little bit out of control, but I've got the green light and I drive through and that guy T-bones me and he kills my wife or whatever, he is 100% at fault for that accident. He crossed the line, he was drunk driving. However, I could have exerted more agency, I could have been more responsible, and I could have avoided that accident.
Okay, now apply that to a woman who goes on a date and then gets roofied and date raped. Like, how much more careful
A
should she
woman
be?
goes out with a guy who's a stranger. She doesn't know who the
Yep.
guy is. She meets him on Tinder. She goes out with the guy. He takes her to not like a sit-down restaurant, but like a club. And she orders drinks. And the guy's like, "I'll go get him for you, and I'll be back." The guy goes and gets him. He gives her drinks. Like, "Hey, do you want to hop in Uber?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And then they go in an Uber, and she blacks out and doesn't remember. And then she wakes up in the guy's bed. That's a situation where the guy is 100% at fault for roofing and raping her. But there were steps that she could have taken to be more responsible, have more agency, where she could have avoided that situation.
You know how good some guys are at roofing drinks? You know, like, the fact is, right, like, you can't be on it 100% of the time, like 100% on, in a date situation where you're meant to be getting to know someone, relaxing.
So then, to tank the productive conversation, so then we should treat women like retarded children that can't protect themselves at all. That's where we're back at now. That's what you've just told me. I don't view women in that way. I've been friends with too many women that are too good and too smart and too responsible in their life to pretend that women are like this. If a guy wants to roof for your drink, there's nothing you need to pretend it. I wholesale reject that. My view of women is not as infantilizing as yours, and I don't think that we're ever going to agree on that.
Do you realize it's...
Okay, I don't care. I'm done with this. I'm done with these talks. I'm done. All right. Go.
Did you win the debate?
No, I'm ready to lose the debate and the ELO. There is no winning in these conversations.
No, not a debate. That's what you say when you lose, right?
Yeah.